Hello friends and welcome back to Dice Throne Hero Spotlight, where we are looking at all of the heroes in Dice Throne, and we are finally up to Season 2 of Dice Throne, starting off with the Gunslinger. Now the Gunslinger is a fairly simple character, but she's still got a lot going for her. She has ways to gain combat points, ways to be doing extra damage, and some really unique and interesting mechanics in how she plays out. So let's take a look at the board, take a look at the cards, and see what we've got. Alright, so here is the Gunslinger. She's a Complexity 2 hero, and she's got a few different interesting things going for her. Quite a unique defensive ability and also a passive ability over there, but we'll get into those in a moment. First off, let's start over here with the dice. Fairly standard here. Just 3 different symbols. 1, 2, 3 is bullet, 4 and 5 is dash, and 6 is bullseye. We've got 4 different status effects. Up the top, we've got evasive, which we've seen before, but in case you forget, it's a positive one. It has a stack limit of 3. And if you have evasive and you would take damage, you can spend this. If you do, you roll a dice, and on a 1 or a 2, you don't take any damage, and you can spend multiple of them if you want. Evasive is very strong, basically a 1 in 3 chance of taking no damage, and you do have 3 of them, up to 3, that you can have on you at one time, which is quite strong. Then we have Reload, a positive status effect that's unique to the Gunslinger. So if a player concludes their offensive roll phase with an attack, they may spend this token. If they do, they roll a dice and add half that value as damage rounded up. That's an attack modifier, and this is a stack limit of 2. So we're going to be adding 1 to 3 damage onto most of our attacks, which is just a nice little buffer. But yeah. And then we have Knockdown, which we have seen before, but as a reminder, it's a negative status effect with a stack limit of 1. And if someone has this, they either have to spend 2 combat points before their offensive roll phase, otherwise that offensive roll phase gets skipped completely. Either way, the token gets removed, which is always a little bit annoying, but essentially you're usually just taxing someone for 2 combat points. It's very rare that you'll see someone actually skip their offensive roll phase because of this. And then we have Bounty, which is quite a nice one. This is a negative status effect with a stack limit of 1. If you have this token, whenever you're attacked by an opponent, the attacker increases the damage by 1 and gains 1 combat point, and it is persistent, so it is going to stick around. So once you've got Bounty on someone, all your attacks are dealing an extra damage, all your attacks are giving you 1 combat point, which is very nice. Now let's start over here with this passive ability, Quick Draw. During your upkeep phase, gain Reload. So we're getting that Reload status effect every single turn. We're getting 1 of those, which is very strong, and so we're going to be able to use 1 of those on every attack. But there's actually an upgrade to Quick Draw 2. When you spend a reload, you may reroll that die 1 time. So that means that we're less likely to be doing only 1 damage with that 1 extra damage with that reload, and more likely doing 2 or 3 damage, which is quite nice. Now we have our basic ability here, Revolver. On 3 bullets, deal 3. On 4 bullets, deal 4. On 5 bullets, deal 5. That's a fairly mediocre basic. When we upgraded it for 2 combat points, it goes up to 4, 5, and 6, and on 4 of a kinds, inflict knockdown. As usual with your basic, you probably don't want to be activating this most of the time if you don't have to. Oh, and I didn't mention, but the upgrade for the passive costs 2 combat points as well. Up here we have Bounty Hunter, 2 bullets and 2 bullseyes. You inflict bounty and deal 1 undefendable damage. And of course, because you've inflicted bounty, that will become 2 undefendable damage as well. And it does have an upgrade for 1 combat point, where you're dealing 2 undefendable damage, which would become 3. So this is a nice one to try and get off early so that all of your attacks are being increased by 1 damage. All of your attacks are giving you a combat point. It's a really nice one to try and get early on. Just gives you a lot of added value. Next up, we have Take Cover, 2 bullets and 3 dashes. Gain evasive, then deal 5 damage. That's fairly nice. Fairly solid way to be able to get evasive. And we have an upgrade for it, Take Cover 2 for 2 combat points. It's 1 extra damage, but we also have this option of Mark the Target. Gain 2 evasive and inflict bounty. Usually we want to be getting the Take Cover rather than the Mark the Target, of course, but it's nice to have additional options, as always. Now up here we have Showdown, which is their small straight. After targeting an opponent, you each roll 1 dice. If your roll is equal or greater, deal 7 damage, otherwise deal 5 damage. So you're doing a little bit of a roll-off here with your opponent, which is fun. And we do have an upgrade for 2 combat points where your damage is increased by 1. And then there's even a Showdown 3 where the damage is increased by 1 again, but only if you win the showdown, not if you lose the showdown. So that's can be a reasonable amount of damage, but of course, because it's coming down to that roll-off, it isn't always going to be reliable. So it could just be 5 or 6 damage that you're doing, in which case you're better off with the Take Cover rather than the showdown, generally speaking. Then we have our large straight. Gain 2 evasive and deal 7 damage. That's a fair amount, and 2 evasive is always quite lovely. Then our upgrade, which costs us 2 combat points, adds 1 more damage and also gives us Pistol Whip for 2 dashes and a bullseye. Gain evasive, inflict knockdown, and deal 1 undefendable damage. It's a nice option to have. As always, a bit of utility there. And then we come over to our 4/6's ability, inflict knockdown and deal 6 undefendable damage. That's a smallish amount compared to some, but it is worth remembering that on all of these attacks, these numbers might feel a little bit small, but you're adding to all of them with that reload, so it's 1 to 3 damage that's added from that, and hopefully also adding to it from the bounty. So that's 2 to 4 damage that is being added on top of all of the damage that you're seeing here, ideally. And our upgrade for our 4/6's makes it 8 undefendable damage rather than 6, so 2 more. This costs 2 combat points. And then we have the 3/6's ability, gain evasive, inflict bounty, and knockdown on up to 2 chosen opponents. Obviously, if you're in 1v1, you're only going to be able to choose 1 opponent, but if you're in a King of the Hill style game, or if you're doing a teams game, then you'll have more options there. Then we've got our defense roll, duel. Only rolling 1 dice, but you and your attacker each roll 1 dice. If your roll is greater, you may choose to either deal 3 damage back or prevent half of the damage rounded up. If your roll is not greater, you deal 1 damage. So this is a really interesting and unique sort of defense roll here. Obviously, again, it's similar to that small straight ability where you're doing that roll-off, though here your roll does need to be greater for you to gain the advantage. You're always at least doing 1 damage back, which is something. But yeah, being able to prevent half damage is quite nice. We do have an upgrade for 3 combat points. Here, the only change is if your roll is equal or greater, you get the bonus. So that's the only change there with the upgrade. So some interesting things happening there. And then we have our ultimate ability, Fill 'em with Lead. Gain evasive, inflict bounty knockdown, deal 10 damage. If you spend a reload, you may reroll that die 1 time. So we're getting all the things, dealing a lot of damage, seems pretty good. All right, and then we have 6 cards in the deck that are unique to the Gunslinger, starting off with our promo card here. As always, for no combat points, roll a die. On a 6, you inflict bounty and knockdown on a chosen opponent. On anything else, you draw a card. Bounty and knockdown is always nice to be able to get, and we do love having extra card draw as well. Next up, we have Spin the Chamber for 1 combat point, gain reload. Most of the time, you won't need to do this because you are getting 1 every single upkeep. So usually you won't need to be getting extra, so I feel like most of the time you can happily sell this card. Next up, we have Wanted for 2 combat points, inflict bounty on a chosen opponent. This can be handy, particularly if you're having trouble with getting those 6s for that bounty hunter ability, because it does need 2 6s to activate it. So if you're having trouble with that, this can be an option to use. It does cost you 2 combat points, so that is a little bit to invest, but maybe that might be worth it for the combat points that you're going to get back and the damage that you're going to be doing over the course of the game. Next, we have Roulette. Choose a player and then roll 1 dice. On a bullet, deal 2 damage. On dash, inflict knockdown, and on bullseye, inflict bounty. All of these are pretty good, though keep in mind that knockdown and bounty both have a stack limit of 1, so if you're targeting someone that already has bounty on them, you can whiff on this. So just keep that in mind as you're playing the card. Then we have 2 roll phase cards. We have Eat Lead, which is an attack modifier. For 1 combat point, you roll 5 dice. You add, for each bullet you roll, you add 1 damage. And if you add at least 4 damage, you're also going to be inflicting knockdown. So this is up to 5 extra damage for 1 combat point, which is always lovely. Statistically, you're probably going to be getting about half that, because you got a 50-50 chance of rolling a bullet. So somewhere between 2 or 3 damage usually that you're going to be adding with that 1 combat point, which is fine. And then Wild West, also an attack modifier. When you spend a reload, you may reroll that die 1 time. If you do, add an additional 1 damage to the outcome. This is fine. There's probably better things that you can be doing with your cards and your combat points, but it's nice to have options. So as I was saying, some interesting sort of mechanics and things happening here. The roll-off sort of aspect to the showdown and the duel is something that's quite unique to the Gunslinger and is a fun sort of interaction with the other player that you get to do. Just having that reliable extra damage every single turn is quite nice, and being able to also get consistent combat points with that bounty is quite lovely as well. But yeah, that is the Gunslinger. Alright, and that was the Gunslinger. As you can see, some interesting options there, a little bit of a different playstyle than what we've seen before. Some aggressive sort of tactics that you've got happening, but also you've got that evasive, you've got the potential to prevent half the damage that's coming at you with your defensive ability. So a lot of ways to be able to avoid damage as well as deal damage. You've got some ways to be gaining combat points as well with that bounty ability, but not really ways to be drawing extra cards. So if that's something that you like to play with, maybe a different character might be more your style. But certainly a few different status effects that they're playing around with as well. But let me know what you think. Have you had a chance to play with the Gunslinger yet, or maybe play against them? How did it go? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section down below, and I hope to see you here next time as we talk about the Samurai. But until then, see you next time.